So, as Robin mentioned, we're going to speak on relationships today. And I've really broken down relationships. There's many types, but I want to break them into just two categories. And the very first category is this sort of expectation-based relationship, which all of our energy is really centered out here into the world around us. And we kind of have this list of things that we're hoping to receive from those relationships. And so it's so much based on what is the other person being, doing, and having. And so you've got the second form of relationship, which is really a love-based relationship. And that's what I'm calling sacred relationship. And so really, I think our task today, more than ever, is to return back to this love-based relationship. And it is a relationship that is based on wholeness and completion, right? And so that is the shift. Instead of thinking, okay, I want to find this perfect person where I can experience my completeness, we say, I'm going to go into a relationship so that they will complete me. I'm going to go into the relationship so that we will experience completeness. The completeness that we already have, you see. There's an individual named Ram Dass that I've shared many times before, and he was working with people that were dying. And somebody asked him, how do you maintain such a peaceful presence that is so helpful to all these individuals who are dying, making their transition? And his answer was, I work on myself. I work on myself. Now that's a very different thing than we're oftentimes taught. We're usually taught that we want to spread the energy out here and we want to affect the world and change the world out here. And especially if somebody's making their transition. But he said, I work on myself. And that was what had the most powerful presence and the most powerful effect on those individuals around him. Now, at the soul level, at the deepest level of our essence, every single one of us is complete and whole. We're already there. We're already connected with God. Our second unity principle says that we're made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, that lives in us. We call it the Christ. So that image and likeness is our deepest essence, and we are already there, and we are already complete. Now, I want to show you a few examples from science, because science is getting more and more spiritual. And it always was, of course. We're discovering that it is so spiritual. And the science itself illustrates that the universe is complete. And so if we look back at Dr. Hans Jenny, he was one of these individuals early on that started experimenting with sound, and he would take these particles of sand and he would put it in water, and then he would send a sound vibration to them. And these particles of sand would form themselves into these beautiful geometric shapes. And no one knew why. You know, particles should not do this. Make these gigantic geometric shapes. So Buckminster Fuller comes along, who you may know of, and he dunks a balloon in dye, and then he takes the balloon out, and he does the same thing. He sends a sound vibration to the balloon, and this dye forms itself into these beautiful geometric shapes. And they start to figure out what these shapes are. And then along comes another scientist, Dr. Dan Shechtman, in the early 1980s. And what he does is he takes two atoms, manganese and aluminum, and he heats them up, and he puts them in this vat, and he just gets it really hot, and then he cools it down really, really fast with liquid nitrogen. And what happens that none of the scientists could understand is all those atoms form, thousands of them come together, and they form these geometric shapes, 3D geometric shapes. And he shared this with his colleagues, and no one could comprehend it. They told him to go away, because it blew away everything that they had in their models and all their textbooks and all their grant money and everything that they were studying, because it blew away the particle model of the atom. Because atoms are not supposed to come together like that. They're supposed to be individual, like Lego blocks that you build together, right, and share these electrons that form these bonds. And so what he had discovered was they're not particles. And what was happening in these big geometric shapes is they were combining all their electrons, and so he thought they're not particles. They're these fluid-like forces of energy. Now, what all of this was saying was that there's this underlying unifying geometry behind all of the atoms in the universe. There's this unifying force that they're starting to discover. Now, just a few years ago, in 2013, these grad students at Caltech, they were looking at the diagrams. They're called Feynman diagrams, and they're like the bane of all grad student physics students. And so what they are is, this guy finally looked at the way that particles interact at a micro scale, the quantum mechanics of how all these particles are moving, and he made these gigantic equations that are 90 pages long to discover how every single particle is moving in an atom. And these two grad students went through and they discovered, guess what? They all move in the same particular pattern, and that pattern is a geometric shape. And so how does all this relate to a relationship? It is saying that the universe itself is a singular geometry, and it is already complete. Every single atom is coming from that state of completeness. There is one unified form. Not to mention what the implications of this imply on batteries and free energy and farming and communication and transportation. When you go within and you discover there's a singular geometry, they even know the shape. It's called a positive Grassmannian, that underlies all of the molecules. It's saying that every single atom is praying, and every single molecule is meditating, and it is emanating from this original shape. But what we do is we go into relationships and we say, it's all about this person out there. We forget that there is a sense of completion underlying the entire universe and underlying ourselves as well. Now you go behind that, of course, and you look at the scriptures and they say, well, behind that is light, and behind that is sound, and behind that is love, and behind that is thought. So one day as we discover that, we will get there, and we will start manifesting this world of abundance and love even more. So at the deepest level, every single atom in the universe is complete and is seeking to return to that completeness. Now there's this individual named Sadhguru Yogi, and he's kind of a popular teacher today in India and in the West as well. And he has this statement about how to live happily. What he says is, right now, somebody else, if they determine what should happen around you, you feel like a slave. But right now, somebody else is determining what should happen within you. Is this not slavery? Somebody can decide whether you will be a pleasant human being or an unpleasant human being. Is this not slavery? What happens within you, somebody else determines. This is the worst form of slavery, isn't it? Isn't it so? It is just that because everybody is like that, it seems to be normal. It is not. It is not normal just because everybody is like that. It does not become normal. Can you see me right now, all of you? Can you see me? Just point out where I am. Use your hands to point out. Oh, you got it wrong. You know I'm a mystic. You got it completely wrong. Now this light, it's falling on me, reflecting, going through your lens, inverted image in your retina. You know the whole story, right? Where do you see me right now? Within yourself. Where do you hear me right now? Within yourself. Where have you seen the whole world? Within yourself. Have you ever experienced anything outside of yourself? Everything that has ever happened to you, darkness and light, happened within you. Pain and pleasure happened within you. Joy and misery happened within you. Have you ever experienced anything outside of yourself? No. So what I'm asking you is, what happens within you? Who should determine how it should happen? What happens within you? Who should determine how this should happen? Somebody else? Definitely you should determine what happens within this, isn't it? So if you determine what is happening within this, your whole experience of life will be determined by you. Nobody else but you, isn't it? The world events around you may not be determined by you, but how your experience of life is on this planet is 100% determined by you if you take charge of this. If you live it loose, just about anybody will determine it. They will. Not consciously. They are also like you by accident. When your happiness is dependent upon what is happening outside of you, constantly you live as a slave to the external situation. This is the key to sacred relationship and to all of life. Change the inner experience. Change the inner experience. Every molecule is trying to change the inner experience and return to that original shape. Another scientist discovered that there are no protons. He said that inside the nucleus there's just geometric forms, and that the protons are actually the corners of this geometry that's trying to shape itself. And within the nucleus are these nested shapes, these nested geometric forms. This is totally different than what we've been taught, right? We're going to have to rewrite all the textbooks. We're going to have to rewrite the way we go into human relationships as well. We want to change the inner experience. So the happiness that we think we're going to receive from the other is already inside. Now, at this point, we start to shift the way we approach all of life, right? We're not letting somebody else or some world situation control our happiness. And we start to go with the flow of every single atom in the entire universe, what everything is doing, and come from completeness. Now, in this journey, it's a big journey, right? And that's a huge shift in science, and that's a huge shift in consciousness. And so what we want to start doing is really working on our own ego and purifying that ego, letting those layers go. Because if you look back in time, we have really been receiving a tremendous amount of programming from the world, right? That most of the thoughts that flow through our consciousness are not our own thoughts. We've received them from our family and from our culture. And so we're beginning to let those go. And we may have thoughts like, I need to be treated a certain way. And then we go out into the world, to this restaurant, or to this place, and we expect everyone to know exactly how we think we should be treated and to do that. And then we get frustrated when that doesn't happen. But you just go back to Sadhguru. What happens within you, somebody else determines. And we become slaves if we live this way. Now you take this into our one-on-one relationships, right? And we say, oh, I want you to prove that you love me by saying this, or by doing this, or by giving me this thing, right? But the wound is inside of us. That's where the original wound lies. So we've got to come back, and as Ramdas said, work on ourselves. Work on ourselves. We might say, oh, don't leave me, or keep me safe. But we're always going to be disappointed, right? Because again, we're looking outside of ourselves. We're always going to get angry. We're always going to become depressed because we want that person to complete our own wounded message inside of us. Now we start to reverse this, and we start to embody in ourselves what the whole universe is speaking to us. There was another scientist named Nassim Haramein, and he discovered that every atom functions like a black hole. And these individuals are people that are winning the Nobel Prizes for things like this. This is not light science. These are heavy guys. And so what they're saying is that it's bringing in energy from the universe, and it's letting it flow through it. It's sucking in energy and letting it flow through it. It's like a transformer that's digesting the energy of the universe and letting it flow through. That is so much easier than a whole bunch of complex molecules that go together, right? It's so much more spiritual, and it's empowering what we teach here in Unity. So all of us are supposed to gather that energy from within ourselves. Now as we do that in relationship to all of life, relationships just get easier, right? They get so much easier and so much more joyful. And we become more forgiving and more patient and more understanding when things don't end up being just how we want them to be in the world around us. Now we start to couple that with our spiritual wisdom that we learn in Unity, and we start to come from within and hold the highest vision for ourselves, for our family, and for this whole planet. And our life starts to shift. Now our culture, if you look at it, okay, it's very interesting because it used to be we had to be strong and kind, and that was enough. There's my partner, yay. And now we add, we gotta be funny, and you gotta be clever, and you gotta be intellectual, and you gotta be spiritually knowledgeable, and you've also gotta be handy at the same time and sexy all at once. And we just kind of keep adding to this list. And if you look at it, it's all focused out here, right? It's a very unhealthy expectation because nobody's ever going to meet all that stuff. Now we are growing and we are evolving spiritually, so we are becoming more one with all things. But the person next to you is not going to bring you that oneness. They're going to hold the sacred space where you can come to it yourself.